next one that we're going to look at is called Fancy Login. And this one is just a beauty. So I'm going to open it up on Mac here so that we can look at the whole shortcut. And so this shortcut is nothing more than a very well-designed CSS HTML web page. And so the bulk of the shortcut is this text action that has the entire web page coded in here. There's a few customizable things like the background color, the foreground color, the text color. It uses a nice linear gradient. And so when you run the thing, I'm going to run it on my phone. When you run the thing, it opens up a Safari page, and you get this awesome login window. And it's functional, so you can come in and actually log in. Of course, I have no idea what I'm logging into here, but you know. And the password is actually concealed. So this is potentially a really awesome way of getting user credentials. So like maybe, and I haven't thought of the actual use case here, but like maybe you have like a folder on your network drive and you like to be able to access that folder from your iPhone, but you want to restrict access. So you can stick the connection information to the network drive in this shortcut and access it this way, so that you create the appearance of a secured access mechanism to it. And so while I'm not totally sure what the intended use case is here, maybe we get some clues from here. Yeah, I mean, I think this is basically the goal of Fancy Login, is to break the confines of shortcuts using AppleScript or using JavaScript.
Yeah, I can see it being like if you wanted to enable people that you let log into a private server or something, and you're giving them a user ID and password themselves or something, like you could potentially use this for, I don't know, a time clock, if you wanted to build a time clock in shortcuts or something.
Yeah, and, unfortunately we don't have Dr. Cummy Mummy Mem in the audience, but I'm sure they can provide some insight. And I would warn anyone in the audience from assuming that this actually provides a true layer of security, because anything that you send using like an open URL call or a get contents of URL call in shortcuts, the URL that you use, and if you use like a post get message from or get contents of URL action, anything that you send across that is going to be readable from whoever controls your network, and so there's potential for sniffing the web traffic from your phone and getting it that way. And so there's multiple higher levels of security and encryption that are in place. For example, when you do things like open up your banking app on your phone, it's not just sending your unencrypted username and password as part of the URL that it calls. Whereas in this case, what this shortcut is going to do is it's going to collect. So when you click done on here, it's going to copy the username and password to the clipboard, and then in here it fetches the contents of the clipboard, and now it can do something with the username and password. And so
Right.
it's the illusion of a more complete layer of security. But if your goal is to like keep your kids or your friends from thinking that they can just access some location that you don't want them to have access to, this definitely creates a facade of the type of security that would probably scare them off, unless you're all a bunch of computer science friends, and then they'll just take it as a challenge.
Right.
But this is really cool. One of the coolest things about shortcuts, I think, that is not at all apparent to people that are just getting into shortcuts, and even like some intermediate and advanced users, is the amount of beautiful user interface customization that you can achieve by writing a web page in a text action and then opening up that web page either using an open web view action, or and the way this one works is it uses the data x callback URL in order to use Safari to open the page itself. And it's a really cool trick that, in my mind, separates the more nuanced, advanced shortcut developers and those with a decent amount of web development experience from the rest of us plebes.
Yeah, no, it's definitely beautiful, and I think that's where it shines is the 2 points that the breaking the confines, but also just presenting a really really beautiful interface. I mean, there's definitely some work that went into making that look good and stuff. So that's a great example of anybody that wants to look at how that's done. Check this out, and then you can see and especially I think that data text way of doing it is better for executing JavaScript, I think, too, right?
Yeah, probably. And I mean, in my mind, so I try to make my shortcuts so that they can be run from Siri, so that they can be run from a widget, or from inside of the Shortcuts app. And so anytime that the shortcut has to lean on another app, it sort of breaks one of my personal rules for shortcuts, because my imagination of a typical user is that they're going to be like, what's happening here? How come the shortcut isn't just showing me the thing? Why is it taking me to a Safari page? And so I usually don't like to cross that threshold, but it unlocks some really cool stuff if you're willing to do that. And we've got a comment from .dev. So here's a suggestion on how to improve the dynamic nature of the login window, so that it would be more, so that because you saw on my phone when I ran this thing, I have an iPhone mini, and so this thing comes up and it's just teensy weensy. And so if you utilized some different CSS here, or HTML, sorry, I'm not actually a web dev. I don't know where the boundary is between CSS and HTML when I'm looking at it. But if you utilized some different magic sauce here, then you could potentially get a login window that filled the screen in a portrait or in a portrait aspect ratio, and maybe it could also add in like line breaks so that you don't have to keep the text so small. Is that what you had in mind, .dev?
I'd be curious if anyone else in the community has some feedback on how was that HTML written? Was it just some boilerplate and they modified it, or do they use a tool to create that HTML, then they paste it into the shortcut?
Well, that's a good question. In my case, I know enough terminology that I can wield Google Gemini and ChatGPT in a pretty effective way to make this stuff for me. So you can just say, like, I want to make an HTML login window. I want it to have a nice linear gradient for the background color. I want it to mask the password, and I want it to have a login button and a forgot my password button. And that's enough for either of those chat bots to get you 90% of the way there.
That's really cool. That's a great idea. I'd never considered that. Really cool.
Yeah, my guess is it's created with some sort of a live server or something, or they're testing it. Like they have to be creating it with Visual Studio Code or something with a live server running. I mean, I would hate to not do that. a little bit of web dev experience I have, which is not much, but it's more than the average Joe, that would be just painful to try to do it within shortcuts and then run it every time to look at it. And so,
Yeah, I agree. When I've done this kind of stuff, what I'll do is I'll make a text file on my computer, save it with an HTML file extension, and then you can just point Safari to the text file, and then
right.
you can have it open in Safari in one window, and you've got your text editor in another window, and you can make changes, save the file, refresh the page in Safari, and see if you like how it looks.
Right. Yeah.
And so that's a
Yeah.
much more rapid development style.
So in VS Code, it happens like without even saving it too. It's really nice. It's you pretty much almost see live. It's like every 5 seconds the little mini server updates.
Okay, but you're running a server, right? Like Nodamon, or you're running some sort of like React backend server to render it.
It works all in VS Code.
Cool. I didn't see
Yeah,
that.
it's like some plugin. I only use it when I'm actively developing my own CSS stuff, which has been a long time from now. Yeah, for the most part, you can just kind of, you know, reload every or save the file and reload every 10 minutes or so and see the changes. So,
Interesting.
Yeah, and the VS Code is definitely a better way to go. And I guess that if you're if you're familiar enough to be using an HTML text file in your web browser, that's no more conceptually difficult than just getting a copy of VS Code up and running.
yeah, yeah, it's great. I love VS Code. It's just it's got GitHub integration and you don't really need to leave it for the most part.
Yeah, I've
So
abandoned all my old editors. Now I just use Visual Studio Code for everything. I really like it.
yeah, yeah. I need to actually spend some time configuring mine because I've been like when I was helping you make the Markdown for menu generator, I was using an app called Obsidian, which is really good for Markdown stuff. But it was kind of I was having to jump between programs, and I'd rather not do that. So, but it's nice to do that too, though, just so you